Hello and welcome to another edition of Sun Dragon Tips and Tricks. I'm Rebecca. I'm the owner of Sun Dragon Art and Fiber in downtown Brevard, North Carolina. And it's Monday, so I'm coming to you from my house on a very rainy day. It's August. A couple of reasons that's exciting for us. It is our 5-year anniversary of being a physical shop in Brevard, which is awesome. And we are starting our Brioche Bandana Cowl Knit-a-Long. I'm super excited about this because it's a wonderful way to review and learn brioche, like what I would call the 2 different levels of it. And the pattern that Lavanya Patricella has made and released, she has 3 different versions of it, and each one is a different thickness. So if you're going to try this, definitely get the pattern. These videos will not be replacing the pattern. They will be supplementing. They will be in addition to. I will try as much as I can not to talk about stitch count or anything else that's specific to the pattern, because Lavanya has done a really wonderful job with this, and she has at least her own video from transitioning from in the round to flat, which is something we're going to get to not this week. Anyway, I digress. So I have been working on my fingering weight Brioche Bandana Cowl. The thing I like about this pattern is not only will this make a cowl that has a nice triangular point in the bottom, on the bottom when it's done, which I really like how those sit around the neck. And hopefully next week or the next set of videos for this, I'll show you how my fingering one comes out. But I like this because brioche, which looks like kind of like ribbing, but involves 2 colors. And one side you'll see prominent V's. If you think about ribbing as knit 1, purl 1, the knits on one side are one color. And then they're the other color on the other side. It's a really cool technique that makes this squishy ribbed structure that's reversible, where a different thing is happening on a different side. And so I really like that. I think it's really fun. I find it's easier to learn in the round, which is how this cowl starts in a circle. And why I like I call that like brioche level 1, 2-color brioche level 1, because each color has a different task. Only one color does the knitting, and the other color does the purling when you're going in a circle. So I find that's a really good way to start learning the technique. And then level 2 of 2-color brioche is doing it flat, because then what color knits or purls depends on which side is facing you. So you learn the basics with it in the round, and then when you do the point at the bottom of the cowl, you start learning about how to do it flat. There are also a couple of decreases in the way that they lean. So there's a lot you can learn by doing this simple little cowl. My fingering weight one right now, I have just hit where I'm starting to split it and work it flat. But my first videos are going to be on how to do it in the round, the beginning of this cowl, and learn the brioche technique in the round. I will say I have done videos on brioche in general already with the crazy whiteboards and all of the explaining a little bit on how to fix brioche. I've got a whole series of videos. I will start a playlist that has all of these things in it. These recent videos that I'm going to be making are going to be geared towards this pattern, but they're also going to be ones that can help in general. So if you want the version without the whiteboards, these more recent ones are the ones to pay attention to. I think they're both valuable for different reasons. So I'm hoping today to film about 3 videos that will be getting you through the beginning parts and get you started and set on doing brioche in the round. And then in a week or 2, I will be doing videos on brioche flat and the shaping of the bottom of this cowl and a little bit on the decreases as well. So let's get to it. For a minute or 2, let's talk about color A and color B. So the way Lavanya has written this is color A is what you're going to be casting on with and establishing your rib with. But color B is what the prominent V's running down the surface of the outside of your cowl are going to be. Now, in theory, and for the most part, this is reversible. The decreases might look a little different front to back. So with my fingering weight version, I decided I wanted a colorful edge, and I wanted the white, it's kind of white with speckles. I wanted the white to be the prominent V's with a multicolor background. So I cast on, this was my color A with my multicolor. And that meant then that my knit stitches in the long run, in the circle here, are going to be the white ones, and my purl stitches are going to be my multicolor. Now let's take a look. The pattern Lavanya just calls the Brioche Bandana Cowl is written for chunky yarn, much thicker than this guy. I'm on size 11 needles, and I decided that I wanted the V's to be my green, the prominent V's to be my green, which meant the edge around my neck is going to be this rust color, this darker color. So I've already done her instructions of casting on and establishing the rib. The cast on in the first row, we've only got color A going. Cast on, join for knitting in the round. I have videos on that. I'll try to put them on a playlist for the Brioche Knit-a-Long. And then be careful to note that you're establishing the rib of purl 1, knit 1 with color 1. This is like the last time that one color will be doing both knits and purls. You're starting with a purl stitch. Your ribbing is purl 1, knit 1 all the way around. This actually helps the brioche be easier. I started my brioche classes when I was teaching them with knit 1, purl 1. And starting with a purl helps everything settle and hold together better. So you start with a purl 1, knit 1. That means you're ending your repeat with a knit 1 here. So I have established my rib with color A. And then one of the things about brioche, when you look at her pattern and say, wait, why does she have round 2 listed twice and round 3 listed twice? You're done with a row in brioche when each color has done it. So you're going to go around with one color and around with a second. So often in brioche patterns, you will see a row or a round listed twice, once with color A or B, and the second time with the other color. So this video is going to be about establishing the brioche setup. And to do that, we're going to introduce our second color. Brioche, rather than, it looks like ribbing, and we've got the stitches established as a purl 1, knit 1 rib. The way we get the really cool effect like this, where all the knits are one color and all the purls are another, is through a series of working a stitch and slipping and wrapping a stitch. Now I know that probably sounds all kinds of crazy, but as we go, we're going to learn some tips and tricks that will help us keep things in line. They don't apply on this row though, because this row we're just starting to set up our pattern. One thing I'd like y'all to note is both rows have this SL1YO in them. And she marks this in her pattern, but it's really important because you could read that as slip 1, yarn over. And it is, but the thing to keep in mind is that the slip stitch needs a yarn over wrapped around it. And this is the row where we're setting up that wrap is always in the opposite color of the stitch that's being slipped. So I often tell people in my classes, don't try to process that too much or hang on to too much information right now. Let's get this other guy out of the way. But we need to set up a slip stitch and a wrap alternating with a worked stitch. So this row is slip 1, yarn over, knit 1, and keep repeating all the way around. Now, she wants you to do this with color B. And she says in her instructions that anytime you slip a stitch, the yarn should be in front. Now, what I'd like to recommend is that this yarn should start in back. So if you're used to holding the yarn tension-wise in your right hand, I like to grab the tail with my other hand, keep it in back. But she says anytime the SLYO, you need to start with your yarn in front. This will just help it feel more like it's starting right. If we hold our tail in the back, but then move it to the front. And we're going to slip a stitch. It's that purl stitch. And the yarn over, we're going to pull the yarn over to knit our next stitch. Now the next stitch is a purl stitch. As we get going, if the pattern tells you to knit, you should be knitting a knit stitch. And if it tells you to purl, you should be purling a purl stitch. If it tells you to slip, it should be the opposite stitch that this row is doing. So what I mean by that is this is a row where when stitches are worked, they are knit. So this purl stitch, it makes sense that this one needs to be slipped. Now what some people do with brioche is they say, okay, slip one, yarn over. The yarn over needs to be wrapped around that stitch. Right now it's not, it's in front. Get used to, I'm going to slip this stitch back. Get used to every time you're slipping a stitch, make sure your yarn is in front. Since I'm knitting, it's not, so I'm going to move it to the front. And for some people, the way they hold tension, if you're either a flicker, so you've got the tension like this in your right hand, or if you're a continental knitter, so your yarn is set up in your left hand. When you bring your yarn to the front, you could do this and hold it, but really bringing it to the front and doing that yarn over and then slipping will set it up correctly. And then knitting one. Trying this continental. I am not a proficient continental knitter. So anytime it says SL1YO, your yarn needs to be in front. In fact, on all of this, before you slip a stitch, your yarn needs to be in front. And if it goes in front and does a yarn over your needle, it's fine. To the back, that's okay. So yarn to the front, slip one, and then knit one all the way around. This is setting up the routine that will be what the rest of the brioche looks like. It will be a series of individual stitches that you've either knit or purled depending on the row, and a slip stitch with a yarn over. And that will change depending on the row we're on, but it will always be a worked stitch that is straight up and down, like this guy here and this guy here, and then a slipped stitch of the other color with a wrap, a slanted wrap over it of the color that you're using on this row. I know it's a lot of different stuff to hang on to. But again, yarn to the front, slip, knit. For some people, yarn over the needle, slip, knit will work better. Whichever one is a mantra that works for you. I find each row has a 3-word mantra. Yarn over, slip, knit. Again, remember the language in the pattern said SL1YO, which feels backwards from what we're doing. But we always want it to look like this. We want the slip stitch to have a yarn over going across it. If I pull it like this, the rain outside is making this very dark and shadowy right now. The slip stitch of my rust color and the yarn over goes over it from the lower right to the back left, wraps all the way around it. So yarn over, slip, knit. Or if it helps and makes more sense, yarn to the front, slip, and if you don't move it to the back, you just go ahead and knit, it will create a yarn over that slip stitch. Yarn to the front, slip, knit. And every once in a while check, yarn to the front, You're slipping your purl stitch. You're knitting your next stitch. Yarn to the front, slip, knit. Yarn to the front or yarn over, whichever one makes more sense. Slip, knit. A traditional yarn over is your yarn to the front and up over the needle. Slip, knit. Yarn to the front, slip, knit. In fact, in English style knitting, yarn to the front is a yarn over, because by bringing it to the front and then doing your next task, like a slip and a knit, you create a yarn over. Yarn forward, slip, knit. I'm doing this all the way around. This is all I'm doing in this video. Yarn forward, slip, knit. Yarn forward, slip, knit. Let me show you for Continental knitters. I've taught enough that yarn forward feels funny. And again, yarn forward. You can think about it, yarn forward, slip. Oh, doesn't that feel awkward? And then just go ahead and knit. There's a lot of extra motion for a Continental knitter that might get confusing. So if you're a Continental knitter, which means you hold your yarn in your left hand, I'm going to give you some recommendations. If you're an English knitter, you hold your yarn in your right hand. Try to skip this part. So for Continental knitters, you're going to go forward and over the needle and just let it settle there. The slipping is always purlwise. If you've already done a bunch and haven't done that for this row, hey, don't worry about it. Fix it on it. Always slipping purlwise. And what that means is that you are not twisting the stitch. I'll show you again on the next one. But then if I come in here and I knit Continental, yarn forward, just sticking my needle in straight. I'm not twisting it. I'm just sticking it in straight. And knit. Yarn forward, slip, knit. Yarn forward, slip. And with the knitting, I'm not bringing my yarn to the back again. That's too many actions. Yarn forward, slip, knit. Let the yarn carry over the needle and it will wrap. We'll have some funky stuff going on. Yarn forward, slip, knit. Yarn forward, slip, knit. That is the end of my row. Now, what I have found in general, the first thing we're going to do when we come back to this color is bring it to the front to make the next time we use it go correctly. So honestly, I would move it to the front and just leave it hanging there before I move on. What we have done on this row, I will try to show. We've done the setup because for the rest of the brioche, we're going to have single stitches of the color we just worked, which is the green. And those stitches will be straight up and down. And then those will alternate with stitches of the other color, which for me is my rust, with wraps over them, yarn overs or wraps over them of that color I was just working. So I have stitches, I have a single stitch of green, and then I have a stitch that's brown with a green wrap. And I have a single stitch of green, and I have a stitch that's brown with a wrap. And I've ended on the right part of, I started with a slip and a wrap, and then a knit, and I'm ending with the knit. So this is the setup row. And the next video in my playlist, when I'm done editing and posting, will be the second pass of round 2, which is going back to color A, which is this guy. We'll see you in the next video. So thanks for joining me for the setup round of Lavanya Patricella's Brioche Bandana Cowl. I am doing a chunky version for these videos, and I'm doing, or bulky, and I'm doing a fingering weight version also to show you how they look. This is my example for the videos. And I've just gotten through the first part of round 2, the setup round, which gets us into the thing we want to be looking for every single other time we do this, is that we have a stitch and a wrap, and they are alternating colors. And then we have a single stitch of the color we just knit. My next video is going to be on what to do with color A, which is going to be our pearl color. We're going to get into fun terms like brioche knit and brioche pearl, and my abbreviations and a lot of people's abbreviations for those terms, brioche knit and brioche pearl. And like I said, this week I'm hoping to get us through enough to get you set up to start knitting in a circle. You know, before I sign off, I always mention subscriptions. If you want to subscribe to this channel, we just hit 5,000 subscribers, which is fantastic. If you'd like to become a member here and support the channel financially, you can also give us a super thanks, which is like a tip. You can go over to patreon.com/sundragon and sign up for a monthly contribution there, where Patreon will send you swag if you stick with us for 3 months. Loving this. I hope you do too. I hope you become a fan of brioche. And as I always like to say, may your crafting be filled with joy and confidence. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.